Perfect. So with this, I would like to introduce the second session. We have our moderator, Sonja Schembeck, my esteemed colleague. And with this, Sonja, I would like to give the floor to you. Thank you very much.
Friends, welcome to our second panel today, which is called Green Economy as a Driver of Social Innovation. And you can see from the screen behind me and from the program that there is still a question mark behind this, and I think we should use the next 60 minutes all together to remove this question mark and to really replace it by an exclamation mark. We will use the time in this panel to showcase best practice examples from the whole region, showing that yes, social innovation and a green transition is highly interlinked also in this region. So, one field in which you can really see the interconnectedness between social agenda and green agenda is city policies, and this is why I'm not surprised that we have many distinguished guests and speakers here who will focus on the community level, showing their best practices. We will have here Sonja Stamenkova first, who is the mayor of Makedonska Kamenica here in North Macedonia. Then we will hear Ksenia Ostric, deputy mayor of Koprivnica in Croatia. We have Laszlo Andor with us. Many of you know him as Secretary General of FAPS. Today he will share also a little bit about best practices from the city of Budapest. And finally we have Denis Žižko from Tuzla, and he is from the Center of Ecology and Environment. Now, my name is Sonja Schembeck. I'm the new director of FES office in Croatia and Slovenia. And for the last 9 years, I would say, with FES, I worked on identifying co-benefits between social agenda and ecological agenda, focusing very much on the question why ambitious climate action should be a must for every social democrat. So without further ado, I would start with the statement of Sonja Stamenkova. Ms. Stamenkova, there are many projects in your city focusing on energy efficiency and also on phasing in renewables. And of course, we would be very interested to hear more about your best practices. And if you could also place a particular focus on the question how we can make this energy transition without adding a financial burden to marginalized groups, or even in a way that marginalized groups benefit from this energy transition in your city.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me express my gratitude to the invitation to participate in this meaningful forum for me, from one hand to share the experience of my small town, and on the other hand to stress the meaning of this topic by listening the previous panelists and the topic that gathers us here today. And I had thousands of thoughts in my head that we have a lot to talk about and even more to do, which means that previously we have tried good enough to come to this situation yet now, so we will have this topic on the top of agenda for us also as local authorities. Why is it good or nice to be a mayor of a small municipality? What are the advantages? It's that the municipality where you have spent almost your whole life, you know it like the palm of your hand. You know the citizens that live here, you know the mentality, you know the needs, their thoughts. Simply, you live with them every day and you breathe the same air with the city. I know my city, my town, which is small and is located on the most eastern part of Republic of North Macedonia. It's a small mine town, but most of the people live in the rural areas. And at the beginning of my mandate, when I came out with a vision for the city as a city which should be and has the possibility to be energy independent, a speaker previously said that we are political persons that fight for the voice among the citizens in order to remain longer to rule, but in other words, to have enough time to conduct all the agendas and the visions for our town. And when from one hand you have a challenge to remain longer so you can work and create for your town, on the other hand, you have to push something between the citizens, something that is not a priority for the citizens, but simply in your vision they see something that is simply invisible. However, if on the top of the agenda 4 years ago I had energy efficiency and using of renewables, and when I confronted with the situation that for this struggle for power, when you walk through the whole territory and see that half of the lights are on some wooden thing which is close to a house, which has the system turn it on and turn it off. So a system which is not centrally operated, and people are satisfied with that. But when you see the damage, first of all, over the environment, because they don't save energy, they're on for 2 to 3 months if there is no one to turn them off, or people have went abroad. Also, you have damages on the budgets. There is damage in terms of emissions. And then you say to yourself, what should I do so I could have a balance to conduct my agenda, to start something, and on the other hand, to say to the people that this is what they have to do for their municipality. Believe me, it's not an easy task. You need lots of energy, you should get closer to people to know how to explain to them, and to say that the increase of the awareness and accepting your mission in order to practice good European practices and bring back the environment as it used to be clean 100 years ago, and with all this technology, you need skills, you need a lot of nerves as well, but always I am here for the citizens with enough energy, because I know that I and my team are on the right path. 3 years now we are working on the field of energy efficiency. At the moment we are in the completing phase, the strategy for energy efficiency, which is a legal obligation as well, but is also a good direction of what's next. What the municipality at this moment is one of the most stable financial-wise. It gives us the opportunity to think wider, to think out of the box, and to act. I can say that in these few years, when you meet more people, and if the topic is often regarding protection of environment, then you know that you have really started doing something real. So even the awareness is getting higher and higher, and that's the basic way, and that additionally motivates me to, in the future, me and my team will continue to conduct the program for energy efficiency and using renewables. I can also say that a big part of the population already has enough awareness to start to invest in individual households. I can say that maybe less than 1/3 don't have photovoltaic panels, but the fact that the municipality is financially stable, that the average wage is much higher than the average in the country, gives us the opportunity and the field to talk to people. We as a local self-government, in our budget, have made a new program which is for energy efficiency, where we have significant We have significantly had means for programs that we will conduct in the future. We will give subsidies for measures which will bring towards the citizens to implement the programs, to use the renewables, to substitute the fossil fuels in the households, to substitute them in the households, and as I said, as the young households has already done that. On the 17th of October, we have local elections. All mayors, my colleagues, have high on their agendas, especially protection of environment, the green agenda, renewables, and preventing harmful emissions of greenhouse emissions, which significantly worsen the quality of life. On the other hand, as a healthcare worker, it's very important for me that we have a healthy population, that we motivate the young people to stay here, to live in a healthy environment, to create in their own country by drawing the best practices from Europe, which is another challenge, which as a mayor or as someone that has to get in front of the citizens and to seek for trust, is to connect what maybe most of people are skeptical about, and that is to connect. So Kamenica is a mine city. Here you have one of the biggest mines in Europe for zinc. And when you say mine, there is always, you think everything is gray, everything is polluted, that the environment is not, it's not likely to be nearby. However, I can say that the social responsibility of the company that at the moment is exploiting the mine is on a high level. Before all, because it's a British investment and they know what a protection of environment mean and investing in protection of environment, and we can prove that it is possible to connect active working, exploiting the mine, and a clean environment. I will not take more of the time. I'm at disposal for questions. I can talk more and more. I love my town. I live here. Although the population is traditional, I believe that slowly but surely the awareness is increasing and accepting all that which is useful for protection of the environment and using, exploiting renewables for saving costs in life and increasing quality of life at the same time. Thank you very much once again. I am here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for this passionate sharing of your best practices. I especially like that you also highlight that citizens are welcoming it when they see that positive change is possible in front of their door, and that can also be something that makes them actually stay in the communities where they're coming from. Okay. One of the fields in which you can clearly see the co-benefits between social advancements and green economy is certainly mobility. And this is why I'm very glad to have you here, Ksenia, as Deputy Mayor of Koprivice, because you implemented a lot of projects focusing on sustainable mobility in your community. And I would now invite you to share it with us.
Hvala, Sonja. Dobar dan svima, drago mi je da imam priliku.
Good day, Sonia. I'm happy that I can give you the projects of Koprivnica, which are mostly going as an example for a sustainable, environmentally sustainable city. We started by Koprivnica is a small town, but a very strong industrial hub on the north of Croatia, one of the cities which have the biggest industry, especially the industry of food production, medicine, then packages and similar. I am sure that most of you from the former country have heard of Vegeta, Chocolino, and the other products. Koprivnica also has a long tradition of social democracy, which corresponds quite well with the ecologically sustainable policies which we started to develop some 20 years ago, maybe even more. We started through participatory projects, making joint documents for strategic development at the beginning of the 2000s. In parallel, we developed the city in three directions. One was ruling with waste, for which Koprivnica is the second town in Croatia when it comes to separating trash. We are over 56% now. Prelog, the neighboring town, is first, and with that we have already passed the European standards. Ruling work in managing waste has reflected on the education of people when setting clean and organized wastelands which had the technology of controlling the wasteful waters, which went and are still going to biological purifier, which the city has constructed from its own budget in 2003 or 2004. Now, one of the, so to say, highlights that are very interesting to us and why people often visit Koprivnica. Recently, people from the Brazilian government were here. And there is a patented technology, and we have a facility that has no odors. And we have technology which can, on a natural way, we can produce compost much easier. Also, giving bio-waste. Koprivnica is one of the pioneers in bio-waste, and this part of the story is of course linked with many technological smart devices for managing waste. Another topic that was very important for us was smart planning of the city. Some parts of the city are so-called green parts, and we do not allow traffic there for vehicles that are not hybrid or electric. That's, for example, the university campus, let's say. But we also plan some part of the park for building family houses or social housings through incentives, first of all, that the building energetically passive or independent houses are free of charge for the investors regarding taxes. Also, the city provides additional money in kunas per kilowatt of solar energy. Is it business or a private household, doesn't matter. Every houses that we have built, regardless of if it's kindergartens or schools, public facilities such as pools and so on, we install solar panels so we could make these facilities independent energy-wise, so production of energy, so to produce energy and to spend it in the facility itself. The third topic, why I'm here today, is the urban mobility, sustainable urban mobility. Koprivnica is a town. When we work for some certification analysis, turned out that we have more bike lanes per capita than Amsterdam. This didn't come overnight. Koprivnica has a long tradition of biking, and we are such a town. It's just that we are, as a local self-government, completely reconstructed all streets by building pedestrian and bike lanes. We have set 8 terminals with public bicycles. We have also set a system of free of charge public transportation with electric buses, which we have designed ourselves and produced in Croatia. And what we are most proud of, We have also a system of free e-chargers, chargers for electric vehicles, but we are also through a project, a European project, we have completely purchased electric hybrid vehicles which are in a car sharing scheme. So no one, neither the mayor or whoever, does not has a personal vehicle. We are all taking cars from the same pool, and in that way we are efficient. What is also very interesting is that through this project, except for the plan of sustainable mobility for city of Koprivnica, which prior to 2015 was finished, and now serves in one of the plans of sustainable mobility, according to which we are making national directives, guidelines in Croatia. In the university in the north, which is the youngest university in Republic of Croatia, and according to the enrolled students, it's fifth in Croatia after the four biggest universities, and we have implemented a study for sustainable mobility. It was the first study in Croatia. Now I see that the others have done it as well, and we have the first generation this year of graduated on this topic. So we are trying our best to have a small and sustainable ecosystem of a climate resilient town. We have small, simple actions which our citizens love very much. Regardless if it's about the World Cleaner Day, when we clean, or closing big streets in order to open it for pedestrians. In the sense, we close the streets and then offer some content, if it's a bazaar or music concerts, playgrounds, fairs of healthy food and so on, because Koprivnica, when you say Koprivnica in Croatia, the first association is food and art and music. So we are basing the whole story on this. Small actions in the sense that, for example, city eco gardens, everyone who lives in a building can get for free a space where they can grow plants on 2 locations in the city, which are well connected and equipped. Then we also talked about the eco incentives, but continuously investing and directing the children and the youth in those businesses through our infrastructure of the entrepreneurship incubators. We are getting them to climate okay, so to say, businesses, that every startup will be built in a way by thinking how good or bad it will do for the environment and community. Shortly, that's the story of Koprivnica. I'm open for questions. Maybe I forgot some things. So I'm here.
Okay, thank you very much. You now gave me an incentive even more to learn the local languages, so I can get rid of half of the cables. And I would really like to highlight this dimension also of international exchange that you brought, that you now have people from the government of Brazil over to learn from you. And in fact, I mean, not only Western European countries are ahead, if you want, regarding socio-ecological city developments anymore. We had some bicycle pathways initiatives in Berlin that were brought to us by the city of Bogota in Latin America. So there is really a lot of international exchange going on a city-to-city level.
Tako je, da. I mi smo zapravo jako puno lokalnih projekata razvili.
We also developed a lot of local projects thanks to international collaboration and EU funds, and we really see a big advantage here in the whole story and the entrance of Croatia in European Union. This has helped us a lot because I just calculated some time ago, in the last 7 years, only the City Council has 72 EU projects completed and now is conducting 9. So from the bigger projects when it comes to traffic infrastructure, water agglomerations, to the small projects that deal with the work with gifted children or exchange of culture, music and so on.
City of Budapest. Laszlo Andor, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Indeed, I would like to speak about the remarkable example of the current leadership of Budapest in the last 2 years since they came to government. Perhaps before that, let me also say a few words about the Green Deal and the Green Agenda from a European perspective, because I very much agree with the title and the motto and the philosophy of this panel, that indeed we have to look at the municipalities for various types of social innovation that help implementing a Green Deal and move towards sustainable and socially inclusive environment. At the same time, what I would like to stress is that a lot of innovation also has to take place at European level. There is no better example than finance. A lot of people even speak about the greening of central banks, the greening of monetary policy, which at the macro level has to take into account the objectives of a green transformation, fiscal policy, very similar. I think a lot of people would agree that the European Union cannot return to the same fiscal rules as we had before the crisis. And one of the reasons for this, there are several, but one of the reasons is the investment needs of the green transition, which need to be factored in the coming years. If we really want to see this transformative change in the quality of the economies and the quality of our societies. The European Union was debating for a very long time, but I think now this discussion is closed, whether we need a new green bank. Because in many countries, for the sake of promoting investment, new public promotional banks are established. I think at the EU level this has been solved basically by transforming the mission of the European Investment Bank, located in Luxembourg, which is now much more than before supports green activities and investments especially, but also the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development in London it has been a carbon neutral bank for a very long time, and also in this region, the Western Balkans, very, very active. For example, in Tirana, I'm aware that they supported a Green City Action Plan, which was repurposing the public spaces and helped reforming the transport system of the city. So in a way, much of these urban and municipal innovations are possible if there is an available support from the macro level. And sometimes the macro is the multilateral level, and the institutions which through finance or policy coordination help this change to happen. And of course, not all the innovation is about finance and investment, because we should not forget that municipalities are also extremely important rule makers, and through their own rules and principles, they can change the practices which are in connection with the natural environment and the use of resources and energy and emission. To give an example or two about what we mean by this role of the municipalities, the city of Amsterdam, for example, set a target for itself that by 2025 they would like to increase the share of recycled items in their procurement activity up to 50%. So procurement is very, very important. To name another city, Malmö in Sweden, has started also to make sure that furniture for the city services actually come from recycled sources. Sweden is very strong in furniture in general, as we know, but they also focus not only on production and commerce, but also the recycling in these examples. So there are many, many examples across Europe which we could study. Some of these cities are really taking a kind of systemic approach to this transition, simply because from incremental changes, it would take a very long time to reach the necessary level of the sustainability. If you have to rebuild, if you have to reimagine a municipal environment, you probably have to tackle at the same time the housing questions, the transport question, the energy, schooling, and all different aspects of the city living together. The European Commission, by the way, started to support these efforts with an interesting program which Ursula von der Leyen called the New European Bauhaus, to unleash the imagination of designers for the sake of a more sustainable living environment. And this is now a program that apparently took off quite nicely. Now, what also took off quite nicely is the new left-green or green-left government of Budapest, which was elected almost exactly 2 years ago in 2019. And the way they started was immediately announcing a climate emergency, right? To immediately bring this message to the citizens of Budapest that questions of climate, the environment, the sustainability are of first order importance, and they would need to develop and implement a huge amount of adaptation and rethinking in order to make this transition, which is so important for the everyday life. So it's not something distant, it's not something abstract, but very, very important for the everyday life of the people. It happens in Budapest, what happens also in many other countries. You can name Paris, you can name Brussels, that car traffic is pushed back and preference is given to bicycle and public transport. By the way, in Brussels, if you only visited Brussels before the pandemic, and now you go back, you will see that in many places there are new bicycle lanes. So they used the period of the pandemic to develop the bicycle lane network. And the same applies also in Budapest, where in some cases they really, maybe we can say aggressively pushed back the space available for cars. So sometimes from the road, sometimes from the pavement, they took the necessary amount of lanes which are necessary, for the sake of spreading the use of bicycles. But there are many other aspects of the climate action. For example, planting trees, according to a new principle, is very important for big cities like this. So we speak about a city of 2 million people, obviously to reduce the density and ensure that where it is possible, instead of building new houses, you should prefer to have a little urban park. This is very true. For example, a former ministry building was demolished, former Ministry of Foreign Economic Relations, and instead of a new building, they established a public park, which is very innovative. It has, for example, an interesting vertical garden and many other little features which bring a kind of 21st century solution to the question of local environment. There is new development and upgrading of district heating. We haven't spoken a lot about heating, but this is also very, very important aspect to save on heating. If you have visited the city park in Budapest, you know that there are some very important places and buildings there. For example, a very famous bath, thermal bath, and also the zoo. Now, what they have done in the last 3 years, that they started to use the surplus heat from the thermal bath for heating the zoo. So now the zoo heating is entirely reliant on the surplus heat of the thermal bath next door. So these are just a few examples. Obviously, the tram system enjoys a preference, and further connectivity and extension of the tram system is taking place. It's a very important development, the modernization of the underground biodiversity, because the problem, of course, is not only about emission and greenhouse, but also the loss of biodiversity, which we need to speak about. Interestingly, in Budapest, what they do against this is to establish little bee fields, if you see what I mean, because yeah, the bee is also something which is really under threat, maybe it's counterintuitive, but big cities like this can also do something against the extinction of bees, and this is also what has been happening. On the other hand, you have to fight mosquitoes, but also it doesn't matter how you fight the mosquito. Instead of the chemical approach, there can be other solutions which are more environmental friendly. Just to sum up by one figure, because there is a serious target for decarbonization. In 2015, 6.11 million tons of CO2 was the emission level, and the target that has been set until 2030 is minus 40% in Budapest. So there is an ambition, and hopefully a government like this can stay in office for long enough in order to deliver on this commitment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Of course, we hope that not only the city of Budapest will be in left hands, but also the national government. Thank you very much also for highlighting already now the need for cities for climate adaptation, because the climate crisis is unfolding, and this is of course also a social issue, because if a heat wave hits our cities, as we all know it, then of course you are more likely to die if you are in a small stuffy apartment in a huge high-rise building, than if you are in a villa with a nice garden and maybe a pool. So this is definitely also a social question. Okay, let's turn to Denis Žižko, who is from Tuzla, and this almost says all of the story. No, you were part of an extensive study on the energy transition that FES commissioned for the whole region, and now I would be really curious to learn about the results.
Yes, well, this will probably be slightly different from previous speakers because I'm coming from an NGO. So I'm not a politician, so bear with me. Actually, before going to the presentation of the study or the results of the study, while listening to the previous speakers, I have to use the opportunity to actually also mention something which is happening in my hometown, in Tuzla, which is, as you said, in the left hands all the time. It's the only town in Bosnia and Herzegovina which is led by Social Democrats, and I'm very proud of that. So the thing is, and it's very much linked to the green economy or the decarbonization, and that's the subsidy program that the authorities have started implementing maybe some 2.5 years ago. And it is based on a program which was implemented in Croatia, and actually the experience from Croatia fund for energy efficiency were used. And there's the subsidy for replacement of coal boilers in households with alternative way of heating, predominantly heat pumps, and also subsidy for installation of the houses And the aim of that is actually to reduce the air pollution, where Tuzla is facing an enormous problem every winter with the air pollution. So, and it goes in line with decarbonization and moving away from coal. And you can imagine how difficult that was actually to present to the general population that has been relying on coal for more than a century. So, anyway, the decision was made by the local authorities, and just short information, basically after 2.5 years, basically in this year's budget, there was $500,000, so it's the budget of the city. It's not a donation from anywhere, it's the budget from the city authorities. We had 350, more than 450 applicants. 350 were actually included in the program, so there will be 350 households less burning coal this winter. So anyway, I had to mention that because I've heard positive stories from other places. Anyway, to go back to the findings of the study, yeah, to mention also this, that I'm actually a replacement. My colleague from Macedonia was supposed to do this, but she canceled, so I jumped in. Anyway, so it's not a prepared presentation. Okay, the thing is that there were several major opportunities which were identified in this study, and the study was done in two ways. First of all, we had meetings with focus groups where we interviewed them for several hours discussing various topics, and also written contributions from let's say, all the segments of the stakeholders in the countries. And surprisingly enough, even for me, and I've been involved in this for 10 years or more, the top opportunity, or the major opportunity after the analysis of the responses, was the actual decrease of greenhouse gas emissions, which was a completely complete surprise for me, because the feeling I have is that the general population is not really, in our country, is not really thinking of the question of climate change as something major. But that can be actually explained by the fact that quite often there is a mix of greenhouse gas emissions and the actual question of air pollution. So quite often people, when talking about greenhouse gas emissions, think of pollution, sulfur dioxide, PM particles, and everything else. So I assume, that's again my assumption, that the actual air pollution is the major problem that has to be addressed through the transition, energy transition, and everything. Following that are the opportunities in development of rural areas. There again, we can think of biomass and going in that direction. And of course, we come to green jobs, which are most important, basically because the whole process of energy transition has to be presented by everyone as the opportunity and not as an obstacle, not as a danger, not as something bad, because in reality it's not bad. The problem we face is that quite often I'm from the NGOs, so quite often the politicians are presenting this transition as something bad, something imposed, and something that will hurt the general population. Of course, there is no transition which is coming without losers. I mean, someone will lose, someone loses in every transition, but the point is that if it's presented as a positive concept, and it is, as an opportunity, we will reduce this negative impact on the general population. So going further, as well as high level of energy democracy, so changing the whole energy system from a very centralized system depending on few big sources into diversifying the actual, first of all, sources and then the number of sources. But for that you need lots of let's say, proper planning, proper development, and it's a long-term thing. You cannot switch it overnight. And again, I'll use this opportunity to say this. We from the NGO, from the civil society, are not asking for the coal mines to be closed immediately tomorrow. We are just asking the authorities to start with a proper process, proper planning for a long-term just transition of these coal regions. We are not asking for the coal mines to close tomorrow, but we are asking the authorities to tell the coal miners that this is inevitably going to happen. It will happen in the next 10, 15 years, and we have to do this process gradually. There are funds available. We can use these funds, but we need a proper plan. And we need a deadline. We need to be honest to us, to the population, and to the donors that we are going to close the coal mines by 2035 or whatever the analysis, proper analysis shows, and then start working on that. So the barriers that were a result of this analysis or the study is lack of political clarity on energy, as mentioned just now, the lack of consent support from the government, social awareness, access to information, and lack of possibility to be involved in the public processes in the decision making. So it's let's call it like this, since I'm also coming from the Aarhus Center in Tuzla, it's lack of implementation of Aarhus Convention and the 3 pillars of Aarhus Convention, access to information, public participation, and at the end, access to justice. So those were the major findings, and they go in line with basically what we have been saying for the last 10 years. I mean, the civil society. We have to start seriously working on this transition. We have to help these regions. This transition has to be led by the local communities. The mayors of local communities have to be asked and involved in the process. It's not the central government. It's not the entity government or whoever. The local mayors are the ones which actually know the needs of their people and know in which direction their economies should move. What are the local opportunities which are not linked to coal? And that's what we have to really push for, and especially address, well, pass this message to European Union, to the donors and everyone, involve the local communities in your planning. Because the central governments, they have their political agenda and they're counting votes. They're not really, they're willing to sacrifice areas if the calculation shows that these votes are not really important. So, anyway, I think time good? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much also to you, Dennis. I also want to emphasize that it's important to frame the transition also as an opportunity or to highlight opportunities. And of course, the energy transition is also an opportunity to democratize the energy system. Of course, energy system is all about power, and this can also be in transition leading to empowerment of the people and energy democracy, really. Okay, I would have many questions to all panelists, and I could go on until tomorrow 6 p.m. when I have something else to do. But I bet you also have a lot of questions, and maybe there are also questions from our Zoom channels. But first of all, I would invite the audience present here to raise your questions. So I see a question in the back over here, and another question over here. Can we have a microphone? I think you were first. Sorry, I can't see it. Is somebody bringing a microphone to the center, a little bit center to the right of the hall? And then maybe you can already bring a microphone to the person asking the second question here to the left. The left of the room. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I greet all panelists. It's a special honor to greet the deputy mayor, if I understood, from Koprivnica, which really, as a town, I had the opportunity to more than 10 years to collaborate or to see each other on these international joint projects. I will say my opinion that maybe what we always have ladies for first people in the municipalities, maybe that's the recipe to have fantastic results in Koprivnica. But my question will be, how much is participation of Koprivnica in these international projects, especially the Horizon Program 2020 and other where we have met each other, are important or significant for the realization of the projects and the successes which Koprivnica, not only within the borders of Croatia, you also see that we see that wider in the Balkans has managed to realize in these years and to do. Thank you.
I would say that we already entertained the second question and then reply.
Is it working? Yeah, it's working.
Yeah, it's working.
Thank you so much, dear panelists. Your presentations were very interesting and inspiring. My name is Ivan. I come from Croatia. I'm happy to hear some of the good examples, especially that include young people in the terms of their future jobs, that universities are adapting to the new green economy. But also I have another question, and it's maybe more for local politicians as you. I mean, back in the day when you were younger, the world seemed much more different. We didn't buy so much appliances so much. We spent less on new technology, and now we live in a consumer society. Do you think that the future is maybe more like in this approach, where we will have, we will buy less but more quality, and we will maybe engage ourselves in sharing economy or repair economy? And do you have any examples of this in your cities and municipalities? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question as well. I mean, the first question was probably directed to you, and then I would invite also the other panelists to answer to the second question.
Okay, I'm not sure that I understand correctly. Gentlemen, you asked about Horizon 2020, and I think so.
This is also what I got from the question, the possibility to cooperate on the European level from the European programs.
Okay. We are very open for cooperation, and Horizon 2020 was one of the funds that we used or contests for developing our projects. Koprivnica, because of the high level of budget, was not able to use many of national funds. So we turned to European funds. 3/4 of all our projects was funded by directly from Brussels or any other possible funds in EU.
Who would like to answer on the second question? Are we going more into the direction of sharing economy? Are there some good examples from the cities you are living in?
Maybe I can say about these jobs, if you want. You ask about examples of this type of economy. We have 2 small businesses that are based on this. First is one business that we develop on green market, because we would like to educate farmers to produce food on biodynamic principles, but also to promote more organic food on the local market. So we opened, as a city administration, we opened a little restaurant that it was to be example of how can we use leftovers from the green market to produce healthy meals. and that have quite good success. Not only in Koprivnica, but more wider. People ask us all the time that we go further outside Koprivnica with this project. So it's also promotion of a healthy lifestyle because the types of recipes that we use is very balanced and good for nutrition. And we also did this with menus in kindergartens and schools. So it's a little type of business that it could be socially oriented and healthy.
Okay, thanks a lot. So small seeds of sharing economy, but it might maybe grow. Okay, I also received some questions from Zoom, because a lot of people are also following us on Zoom, and I would like to ask, let's say, looking at the time, 2 of them, and then entertain also a question we have in the back. So maybe somebody could already go with a microphone to the back, and I will read out 2 questions from the Zoom chat. The first is actually addressed to all panelists. Considering the climate crisis and the possible effects on the wider economy, how many jobs are we risking of losing if we don't act? So this is really the question, not of coal miners maybe having to be reskilled, but how many jobs will we lose if we fail to reach the 1.5 target? How many jobs are we going to lose in different sectors, energy sectors, but also other sectors, for example, agriculture? And then there's a question both to Xenia and to Sonia. How can small cities play an important role in a sustainable transition regarding mobility and other sectors? Or is it always that the first lead is by big cities such as Paris or Amsterdam? What is the role of smaller communities? So these are the 2 questions I would like to entertain from the chat, and then looking at the time, I would also invite the speaker in the back of the room to ask his questions.
Thank you. My name is Mirko Popović. I'm civil society activist from Republic of Serbia, and what was missing on the previous sessions was exactly the overlook from that independent side that I think that Mr. Žižko fulfilled. Now, and he mentioned from my point of view keywords, rule of law, participation, transparency. So I think that actually the rule of law is a main driver of energy transition. So, but I would like to ask you two concrete questions. I'm wondering of examples and how you concretely include citizens in decision-making process. But I would like to hear more about concrete, like budgetary development and actions toward more sustainable spending of money, plans, programs, projects. Projects for the citizens, projects for mobility, transportation, improvement of the air quality. I would like to hear from you how you concretely include citizens in decision making. And another question is whether you are included in decision making on the higher level. For example, Dennis came from the city which is surrounded by thermal power plants. So it is the question how the city infrastructure, the political infrastructure participates in the decision-making process on a higher level, how you are able to contribute to the decisions about where your city will be in the puzzle of energy, climate, and environmental policy on the national level. So I would like to hear your experience and, for example, and maybe your proposal how city administration and city decision makers should be involved in strategic decision on national level. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I think this is also a question that might go to all panelists. So I would invite all of you to also combine your answers with your closing statements. Sonia, would you like to go first?
Yes, okay, I would answer if I can remember. I followed closely. We as a municipality have been, apart from city of Skopje, we, although small, had central power heating, but it was on coal. So we lost jobs due to the energetic transitions because the system for heating is closed now and it does not function. It's not been replaced with an alternative. And as I said previously, we are already pretty in an improved phase in the households, especially in the urban area, of substituting the heating with electricity and other renewables. So we have felt this in the past, how it is to lose some jobs in the transition, but bearing in mind that in this transition, someone will always lose something, but when we know that that the goal that we have ahead of us is justified, then that's the risk, yes. However, gradually, we're going to other ways of heating homes, and this story for us is completed. Although there were tries in the past, concretely by the previous local government, to renew the system of central heating, because in the surrounding there are mines for coal that can be exploited. However, that is not our direction of municipality development. We firmly stand behind the energy transition to conduct it until the end. And second question was, can small municipalities be mobility examples and good examples in general for energy transition and all of the topics that today we are addressing? I can only say that you don't have to be a big city to be an example, because concretely, municipality Makedonska Kamenica, according to the practices it has been doing in the past 3 to 4 years, I didn't mention in my previous speech that with substituting the system for electrical lighting, which is first in the country, first smart system in the country, from the planned 70% of saving, we have 84% of saving. We are one of the regions that are in the most advanced phase with the project for integrated managing with waste. And we are a bright example, although small town, this is a recognized example, not only in the neighboring municipalities, but outside of the borders as well, in Europe. So the production house from Germany, for example, has recognized that good example, so they filmed a nice documentary about us, which is also an acknowledgement for our work. And with an additional motive, and we know that we are on the right path. So small municipalities, sometimes if they're managed well, they can be bright examples for big cities. In regards of creating the budget, I would say for my municipality, we are a municipality where the active transparency, we have 80 municipalities plus 8 within city of Skopje, which are on the list of active transparency. We were 73rd, and last year we reached the 7th place for active transparency. This is a big indicator that creating the budget is done with the citizens. Every point in the budget is on the place where it should be and where the citizens have gave their opinion. Although believe it's not easy to create a budget with the citizens, especially in smaller and non-urban areas, because the meetings are always, I will stress this as a woman as well, every time when you go to these meetings you have 99% men and only 1% women, which always nod their heads and agree with everything that the men will say. Sorry men, but that's the truth. And they are always a bit drunk because it's usually some village corporations or some shops where the conversations are with a bottle of beer in front of you in order to have a certain atmosphere. But believe me, even in these situations, people still say their needs with full respect to them. We create the budget. The fact that we have a budget as we do, and quite often my colleagues say, what are you from the central power doing there? When you have so much money, leave something to us. But yes, this gives us the possibility that the needs of the citizens be please satisfied to a certain level. Of course, we cannot always meet and fulfill all their needs and requirements. Not only 1 year, not in a mandate, you cannot do that. However, the indicator that, yes, the active transparency in a very high level says enough that creating the budget is with the citizens together. Thank you.
Answering basically all of questions that came both from the audience and online. I saw you also nodding when the question about citizens' participation came in, so maybe you also want to have a short comment on that. Looking at the time, I would really ask all panelists to give short statements.
Možda u par rečenica.
Maybe in a few sentences, apropos the question related to the planning and participation of and planning budget and reaching decisions. I think we did a good thing 20 years ago when we started doing the strategic documents of development in the city, where we included the green activists. And when you communicate with people in a way that you respect their attitudes and their knowledge that they are experts for, you can only profit from that in the local community. When it comes to the relationship between smaller and bigger cities, regarding urban mobility and in general, in the small cities, I hear that very often from the mayors of the big cities, everything is much simpler because we are small. However, the process is the same. It starts with education, and I would just take this to the question of the economy and losing jobs. Everything starts with education, educating people, opening possibilities to see all of the jobs that they can work in the future, how they can work their own job, regardless is it production of food, agriculture, energetics, or something third, how they can transform it into a job of the 21st century. I think this is our job as local self-governments, which is actually in charge of quality of life on a local level. And that's the only level that we know. At the end of the day, we all live in our apartments and houses. We walk the same spaces, the same streets, parks. We use different contents that we have in our community. And for that, we are responsible, and we can reach decisions in the most quality way when we collaborate with the citizens, not only formally with through political bodies in the executive power or representative power, but in the processes when we plan how our communities will look. That's the key. If you ask me, we never made a mistake when we included activists. Moreover, we learned much from them.
Yeah, thank you very much also for this insight. Laszlo and Denis, please choose a question for a short final comment.
I could respond briefly to two questions. One is about the involvement of the citizens. The left normally promotes participatory budgeting, local referenda. One example I can give, currently in Budapest there is a clash between the municipality and the national government, which we know is right-wing, about a plan of a student city. So the municipality of Budapest wants to build a student city, good quality, sustainable housing for students, while the national government wants, more or less at the same place, a Chinese university. And obviously these are mutually almost completely exclusive, and the city wants a referendum with the involvement of the district mayors and we should see whether it becomes possible or not. And I think if it's possible, most likely the referendum outcome would be in favor of the student accommodation. The other question, which is very interesting, of course, would require a lot of time to discuss the labor market implications. How to avoid big disruptions and job losses. Very difficult to predict because a lot of predictions about the impact of transformation went wrong, for example, on the digitalization. A lot of people thought that digitalization is going to destroy a huge amount of jobs. In reality, it's transforming a lot of jobs. And I think the green transition is also transforming a lot of occupations and jobs we all need to learn. I'm relying on an analysis by Georg Fischer, Austrian economist, in a book which FEPS published, Our European Future. He wrote a chapter on social policies and the ecological transformation. You can download it for free from the FEPS website, and I hope you find some answers which mainly point to the direction of lifelong learning. It's not a coincidence only that now this European Commission, which promotes the Green Deal, also set very ambitious targets about lifelong learning. That up to 60% of the European workforce should be participating in every year in lifelong learning in 10 years' time. So it's a big build-up, and I think this ecological transformation of the economic model is very much behind the considerations.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Denise.
I'll be very short and very straightforward. Okay. First thing is, when we talk about how do we wake up the citizens and local authorities, I call it wake up, how do we involve them in the process making? That's in the hands of the central government. So the central authorities have to stop telling fairy tales that there is future in coal. So they have to stop lying to the people and the local authorities that they are going to fight to protect the jobs. It's not a question of protecting the jobs. It's a question of creating economic opportunities and job opportunities which are sustainable. If you continue, as they do, protect unsustainable jobs, that's going to bring us to a catastrophe or to bankruptcy of this sector. So stop lying, and by doing that, you're going to actually initiate the involvement of the local communities, which is then going to start asking questions. You are not going to protect us. How are you going to help us? And that's it.
Okay, thank you very much for this very clear statement. Don't protect jobs that are anyway lost. Okay. I have eaten a little bit into your lunch break. We took the actually 75 minutes that were previously allocated for us, but I think it was absolutely worth it. So please give a hand again to all four panelists. And I think we really demonstrated that a lot of good practices are also coming out of this region. Sometimes when you are in Brussels or in other places in Western Europe, you might have the impression of a discourse that Eastern Europe, Southeast Europe is a little bit lagging behind the green transformation, but I think today we saw that there are many, many good examples to prove the opposite, and that you can sometimes even have more bicycle kilometers of paths than Amsterdam, and that we are well in place maybe also to overtake some best practice examples from the north and the west of Europe. Okay, with that, I wish you very nice lunch, and I think we will resume at 2:45 p.m. Okay, seeing you back at 2:45. Thank you very much.